I just want to take a minute to just quickly respond to Ms. Shanahan's very animated opinions on what Parliament can and can't do. So a majority of members of the House of Commons passed a motion. And so that's important. A majority members of the House. So the Liberals want to act like they have a majority, but certainly they don't. And a majority of members saw the corruption of this Liberal government and passed this motion. And the motion calls for documents to be sent to the RCMP. And Ms. Shanahan read a letter, and I just want to share from the Parliamentary Legal Counsel a quote from his letter to the Speaker of the House of Commons. The power to send for documents is absolute and unfettered, period. It is a constitutional parliamentary privilege not limited by statute. As such, the House is not constrained by statutory obligations contained in legislation such as the Access to Information Act, the Privacy Act. I also note that the order did not contemplate that redactions be made to the document or that information be withheld. It's without limit. It's absolute. So they may not like it, and they certainly don't seem to understand it, but it's the law. And a majority of members of the House who were democratically elected made that decision. Now, we know that their Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, favors a dictatorship, but that's not how our system works. Now, the Commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police does report to a minister in Justin Trudeau's cabinet, as per Section 5 of the RCMP Act. But the RCMP, of course, has full and final discretion on the investigations that they launch. But that's not going to stop Parliament from doing its job. We'll make the information available. The RCMP can choose to investigate or not. But much to Mr. Trudeau and his Liberal members here's chagrin, this is democracy, not a dictatorship. A majority of members of the House made a decision, and they can call independent officers of Parliament here to get them to opine on it. But it doesn't change the fact that it's legal. It's the right thing to do, especially after 9 years of the most corrupt government in history. And that's what we have with these members in that Liberal government. Commissioner, I want to move on to yet another Liberal scandal. Did you have an opportunity to review the testimony of Mr. Stephen Anderson, who's the business partner of Justin Trudeau's minister from Edmonton, Randy Boissonnault? He recently appeared at the Ethics Committee. Did you have an opportunity to review that testimony, sir?
Opportunity. I read about it in the paper. I did not watch it personally.
So there's new evidence that was presented of a business-related text messages between Mr. Anderson and a client of Mr. Boissonnault's company. Now, in these messages, Mr. Anderson refers to Mr. Boissonnault 9 times, saying there's going to be a partner call. He went on to admit that there was only one Randy at the company. And we even saw in these text messages that Randy was in Vancouver, Randy in the text messages, the same time that Justin Trudeau's minister, Randy Boissonnault, was in Vancouver at the cabinet retreat. So the evidence of Randy Boissonnault being involved is quite heavy. It's contained in the text messages that were presented at the Ethics Committee. Does this new information require a further look into the matter by you? A brief answer, if you could, sir.
Well, I'm sorry, I can't give you a brief answer, but I'll give you an answer. Okay. What, as you raised this issue, no, you raised this issue with me before. I looked into it and saw there was a reasonable grounds to start. I became convinced that on September 8th, which was the issue day in question, I'm waiting for you because I'm talking to you. I want to see, we have to make sure we both understand each other. It concerned September 8th. September 8th, there was no way Mr. Boissonnault offered to give me all the information on September 8th, his conversation, telephone conversations, emails, whatever. And we looked at all of that, and there was absolutely no way that there was contact between him and Mr. Anderson. Now this new stuff has come up, which I wasn't unaware of, and I wrote to Mr. Boissonnault again yesterday, and I said, I am concerned about these things. Now, please, and these are September 6th and 7th. So far, I know there was no communication on September 8th because you were in cabinet locker, and I have all the documents. Mr. Anderson's email suggests that he was in contact with you. Would you please provide me the same information for September 6th and 7th as you've done for 8th? When I get that, I will determine whether Mr. Anderson is using the name in vain or whether there was actually conversations.
Very brief time left. I appreciate the answer that you're looking for more information from Mr. Boissonnault. How can you be assured that you're receiving information from all of his text messages? We know that he used the app called Signal. We know he used other text messaging apps. Are you certain that you have the messages from all of the messaging applications that he used, including Signal and any other instant messaging application?
We specified in the letter that we want any means of communication electronically, it is between the two of them, whether it's, as you say, Signal or Skype or whatever you use, etc., or telephone contact. Once I get that information, I will be able to exercise my judgment, say, are there reasonable grounds to suspect that there was an involvement of Mr. Boisseneau in this, and therefore an investigation is launched, or really his name is being used in vain by Mr. Anderson in order to give extra credibility to his emails.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. Commissioner, I just want to clear this up for Liberal members who, unsurprisingly, don't seem to know what it is that you do here. But can you please confirm that you do not have jurisdiction or mandate over the ArriveCAN scandal?
I do not have, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, my jurisdiction only extends to reporting public office holders, i.e. senior public servants who have been appointed by order in council, to put it in common language.
And the people that do fall under your mandate, lavish dinners, whiskey tastings, being given to those individuals by suppliers or involved parties, that would be that would fall under your mandate and trigger an investigation.
It triggers an investigation or not depends on the specific facts, but clearly the conduct of reporting public office holders with suppliers, customers, or something like this, etc., depending what the situation is, what happens, etc., would be subject to the act and could lead to an investigation.
Of course. Yeah, it seems like there was an attempt, with you having been suggested as a witness, that this would be an opportunity for the government to exonerate themselves from the wrongdoing that's occurred in this $60 million scandal. But of course, they summoned the wrong officer of Parliament to offer that exoneration if it were available. I have a question for you, Commissioner, about Ms. Annette Verscherian, who was the Liberal-appointed Chair of Sustainable Development Technologies Canada. That's the billion-dollar green slush fund. Why was she subject to the Conflict of Interest Act?
Well, she was the chairman of the STDC, and as such appointed by Governor and Council, and so she was subject to the Conflict of Interest Act. She declared her conflict, and she went through the rules of when she was appointed, letting us know her interests, what's there. We appointed a counselor, as we call them, to her to make sure that her affairs would all be in such a way that there wouldn't be a conflict of interest.
Who was the head of government at the time that she was appointed?
Do you know, Michael?
She was appointed in 2019, so it would be the current government.
So the head of government was Justin Trudeau?
Yes.
What sections of the Conflict of Interest Act did Ms. Verscherian violate while chair of the board at the Prime Minister's Slush Fund, having been appointed by his government?
Michael, give him the details, please.
So there were two provisions. It was subsection 6.1 of the Act and section 21.
Sir, are you able to tell us how many hundreds of thousands of dollars she was deemed to have been the beneficiary of as a result of the conflict?
As part of the report, we didn't do the calculation based on the votes and the dollar amounts associated with those votes.
So we have the Prime Minister's hand-picked chair of his billion-dollar green slush fund who's found guilty of breaking Canada's ethics laws. This is, of course, the latest in a long list of Liberals to have been found to have contravened this act. In your investigation, did you find that former Liberal Innovation Minister Navdeep Bains was aware of Ms. Verscherian's conflict of interest with NR Store at the time that she was appointed? Just a quick yes or no, if you could.
We did not look at her appointment. That's not our job. Our job is to look at her not the steps that go to her appointment, but what, once she is appointed, does she have a conflict and how can it be resolved? And by the way, what we did find, and let's make it quite clear, that she received incorrect legal advice, and that was the real problem. And her advice was because it was an emergency COVID, conflict of interest issues do not apply. That was absolutely wrong.